This is John for the Everyday Fan Sports. Today I have the pleasure of being on the beat with one of my childhood idols, Chuck Swirsky. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well, John. Thank you very much.
Man, I have to tell you before I get into the interview, I'm going to just to be a fan for a minute. I've listened to you from 1979 on. My pal Tom Skalski turned me
Uh,
on to you, and I've listened to you from then on. It's just a pleasure to talk to you now.
Well, it's my pleasure to be on with you. Thank you for the compliment. Appreciate it.
Now, going back to 19, when you first started with the Loop, and I know you're on another station before that, did you ever envision where that would take you?
Absolutely not, John. I kind of live in the moment. And while when I was younger, I always thought and had dreams of accomplishing something such as being a play-by-play announcer for an NBA ball club. The truth of the matter is, every day brings on new joys, new challenges. And so when I'm in the moment, my focus is that moment. It's not really a week, 2 weeks, a month down the road, a year down the road. So when I embraced any position I was in, I busted 24/7, John.
And you've had an illustrious career, Hall of Fame career. Aside from the championships and that type of stuff, what would be some of your underrated highlights?
Well, my underrated highlights is that someone hired me, and gave me that first opportunity. And, it's a struggle. I mean, for any young person listening right now, John, that's trying to break in and they get rejected time and time and time again. And it's a grind. And you can't feel sorry for yourself. You just every day approach it with a positive attitude and say to yourself, this is going to be the day, or at least you get better. If you have a small circle of friends, John, and you say, okay, evaluate my work. What am I doing to get to the next level? Or what am I not doing that's preventing me from taking that step forward? And if they're honest and sincere and loving and caring, John, you will listen, because I do think constructive criticism from the heart is important. So to me, that first, when you mention something that's under the radar, it's collecting a group of people in my life that told me what I needed to hear, John, not what I wanted to hear.
And obviously, you're a sports fan. You've been a sports fan for a long time. Has being in the media has that changed the way you enjoy the games themselves?
Yeah, that is a great question, John. A great question. And, when I watch a game now on TV, I'm always thinking as a broadcaster, the only time, and it's a great question, and I'm being very transparent with you, John. The only time I can really kick back and enjoy a game as a fan is probably watching the Bears,
Okay.
because I'm too invested in the NBA. So when I see, for example, last night, I saw Orlando play. Okay. And I'm looking at Orlando because the Bulls are playing the Magic in about 10 days. Or let's say I saw last night Atlanta and New Orleans. The Bulls are playing New Orleans later in the week. So I couldn't enjoy that game as a fan. I mean, I'm watching Trae Young, John Collins, and DeJounte Murray, and Zion Williamson, and CJ McCollum, and all these wonderful athletes, where normally, if it was somebody who was a sports fan watching this game, they'd be into it. And here I'm saying, okay, I wonder if they're going to run pick and roll in late shot clock. You understand where I'm coming from?
Absolutely.
Okay, where for the Bears, John, like I get really involved because I was a Bears fan even before I came to Chicago.
Oh, okay.
And and the reason why I was a Bears fan before I came to Chicago is when I was a little boy, we didn't have a TV growing up, but we eventually got a TV during the weekend of the Kennedy assassination in November of 1963. My parents broke down, got a TV. So I started watching football, and there was a team that would take the field and it had a C on their helmet. I thought it stood for Charlie, which is my nickname.
Perfect.
So when I was a kid, I'm thinking, Mom, they got a C on their helmet. That means it's for Charlie, right? And then she had to tell me, no, that's a football team of the Midwest in Chicago, Illinois, C. And so oh my gosh, but I became a Bears fan, and I love Butkus and Sayers and that whole group. And how could you not love Ditka?
Yeah. Well, from now on, I'm gonna view that as Charlie's team. Absolutely.
That's right. Forget about America's team with the Cowboys. Charlie's team with the Bears.
Exactly. Listen, I have one more question before we get to your book. I have to ask you, you have a bobblehead. How did it feel to see yourself in bobblehead form?
Well, you know what? The Raptors were very kind enough. I actually have two bobbleheads. One is a bobblehead that actually speaks.
Oh.
And the other is just a normal bobblehead. But it was very considerate of the Raptors to have a bobblehead night. And wow, it was pretty moving.
No, yeah, that's great. I've tried to talk to a Global Traveler. I tried to talk to Global Traveler, the magazine, and they're just not giving me a bobblehead. So congratulations to you. But let's get to your book. Always a pleasure.
Yes.
Well, you have a long career. How do you decide what stories to put in? I'm sure you've got 1,000 stories, but there's only so many pages.
Yep. Well, you know what? Some of those stories may make for a second book that I'm writing.
Yes.
And I've already started putting together, because I keep a daily journal, and some of the stories I want to get in. Some of the, I was very concerned about how long do you really want this book, and how many stories can you really put in? And so I have some that I saved. It's like the Beatles' White Album, I'm putting some aside, and then I'll bring them out later, 3 years later. But, the stories I tell in the book are stories that, involve some really big name in sports that I came across in my journey in sports broadcasting, ranging from Willie Mays in an airport to Kobe Bryant's 81-point game to covering the Super Bowl in 1985, January of 86, to be specific about the date. And I mean, just elements in my life that lead in the book, Always a Pleasure, that lead to really 4 P's. And that's positivity, purpose, passion, and without question, perseverance. Because in this business, John, you have to have perseverance. So I'm glad you mentioned the book. And shameless plug, you can find it, Chuck Swirsky, thebook.com, Chuck Swirsky, thebook.com, published by the good folks at Eckhart Press.
Well, of course I was going to mention the book. As a matter of fact, you can check this. This is documented. I ordered it this morning.
Great, thank you.
I will be adding it to my bookshelf, and I will be reviewing it for Global Traveler, as I mentioned to you.
Let me know what you think.
I'm dying to get into it. Is there anything you learned about yourself, or is there any interesting, different experience through the process of writing the book?
Well, it's very reflective on growing up as a kid. My parents were tremendous people, and I fall short of my father and of my mother. I'm just a flawed man. My father, very, very solid, great man of great integrity, character. He could, when I say I fall short, I'll tell you what, he was so good around the house, fixing broken pipes and working on the home and working on the car and doing all these things. And I don't have his skill. He passed away when I was a little boy. And to this day, when you ask that type of question, John, and while I'm speaking about him now to you in this podcast, I remember him vividly, just changing the oil in the car without taking. In those days, they didn't have Jiffy Lube.
Right.
It was like, okay, you're getting underneath the car and you're changing the oil. And that's what he did. he got the pan out and he opened the dispenser for the oil, and the oil, dripped out. He'd put quarts of oil in. I mean, he'd go to Texaco and the whole bit. And my mom was a school teacher. My father was a naval officer, and he was really strict, by the way, like really strict. Like if my bed, when I made my bed, if the sheets and the blanket, if they weren't tight enough to have a quarter bounce off, redo it.
Wow. Wow.
Like,
Nice.
Old
school.
Redo it. Old school. Like every day he'd come home from the naval base, hand me his shoes. I'd polish his shoes every day, like every day, not like 2 times a week, every day. And he would examine the heel, the sole, he'd look at the face, everything had to be spotless. And as I said in the book, the attention to detail at an early age influenced how I prepare for an NBA game that I'm about to broadcast in a few hours. My mom was a school teacher, and she was a magnificent human being. After my dad died, she was, you lose income. And so now we're living in a house, and my mom is making Catholic school money as a teacher, not much. And so she took on 2 other jobs. And the thing I learned about my mom through that whole period of time growing up, she never complained once. And she had every reason to say, why, God, did you do this to me? Why, Lord, have you taken my husband away? It's having a ripple effect on my family. And yet in the Lord, in the Lord's way, because I am a man of faith and do believe in Christ, I sensed that the Lord had all 3, along with my mom, a plan. And that plan was to serve him through the skill set he was about to bestow on us. And so it was an amazing, amazing way of seeing my mom. And, I talked about in the book when she passed and what Bob Collins did. He was Bob Collins was bigger than GN.
So in your book, it's not just about the sports, it's also about your life, your childhood, growing up.
Yeah.
Faith.
Yep.
So people should buy that book, learn all about it, because people have heard you for years. Now it's a chance to get the inside look at Chuck Swirsky.
That's correct. Yep.
Tell everybody again where they could find the book, sir.
Okay. Well, it's published by Eckhartz Press, ECKHARTZ, Eckhartz Press. And a simple way of buying the book, thank you, John, for this, is Chuck Swirsky. Chuck Swirsky, that's SWIRSKY, Chuck Swirsky, thebook.com.
And I will put the links up in the video. And if anybody can't find Chuck Swirsky, just hit me. I'll tell you where to get the book. Get the book, Chuck. It's been such a pleasure. I thank you so much. The little kid in me is giddy. The old guy in me is giddy. Talking to you, it's really been a pleasure.
Well, John, thank you.
And when that second book comes out, I hope we could redo this and talk about that one.
Absolutely.
Chuck, you have a fantastic day, my friend. Thank you very much.
All right, John. Be well. Thank you.
Take care.